Over a career that spanned more than 3 decades, pioneering photographer Margaret Bourke-White documented some of the most important people and events of the first half of the 20th century. As the first female photographer for Life magazine and the first American woman to serve as a war photojournalist, her remarkable work helped bring the world to the American public and stands as a testament to her willingness to push the boundaries of what was acceptable for women of her time.
Margaret's career is extraordinary in that she was the most famous industrial photographer. Then she was the most famous photojournalistic photographer. That's pretty uncommon to be the most famous in 2 different parts of the medium. And that she was a woman is extraordinary. She did carve a path for women because she charged ahead and she made it in what was supposedly a man's world.
She's a luminary. She's such a significant figure in American life. Margaret's career was pioneering because the photographs that she took were so widely consumed, so widely appreciated, and at the same time because of the larger-than-life personality and because of the fact that she bore witness and her camera bore witness to the major events of the 20th century.
Margaret was born in 1904 in Bronx, New York, the daughter of Minnie Burke and Joseph White. The middle of 3 children, Margaret inherited strong beliefs in personal and social progress from her parents. Margaret enrolled in Columbia University to study biology. When her father died the following year, her financial situation changed and she attended multiple universities, ultimately earning her degree from Cornell in 1927. Margaret then moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where she opened a commercial studio specializing in construction and industrial photography, fields that had been important to her engineer father.
Well, I think it was unusual for a woman to be photographing, period. And the fact that she was photographing industrial sites, putting herself at risk, but also manipulating a machine. She was using technology just as she was documenting technology. She was a woman who braved the dangers of industrial sites while masterfully manipulating the technology of the camera.
Industrial photography had been very straight, very clear, and rather boring. She found a way to get up close, to find the repetition, to find the thing that would symbolize an entire plant in one picture. You could just call it an extraordinary modernistic beauty.
In 1929, Margaret moved to New York City when Time magazine editor Henry Luce offered her the first photography staff position for his new magazine, Fortune.
She was hired to take photographs of the Chrysler Building, which was under construction. She went up on that with a large format camera, and she was up on the scaffolds with the construction workers.
In 1930, Margaret went on assignment to Germany, and from there arranged travel to the Soviet Union, where she became the first Western photographer to photograph Soviet industrial sites.
She came back and she was on the radio all the time. She eventually published a book about it. She made revolutionary Russia available to an American public.
During the Great Depression, Margaret traveled to the Midwest for Fortune magazine, experiencing firsthand the personal devastation of the Dust Bowl.
Margaret went out there and saw something that she and most Americans had never seen, and it did touch her. And it did begin to turn her toward a more documentary, a more humanistic kind of photography.
Margaret remained with Fortune until 1936, when Henry Luce invited her to join the staff of his new enterprise, Life magazine. She was the only woman among the 4 original photographers. Her first assignment was to photograph Fort Peck Dam.
They put her picture of the dam on the front cover, and they gave her the first lead essay.
In 1937, Life magazine sent Margaret to Czechoslovakia and Spain to capture the rise of the Nazi Party. When she returned home, she married writer Erskine Caldwell, and the couple bought a home in Darien, Connecticut, where Margaret would live throughout the rest of her life, even after her divorce in 1942. Margaret's next photography assignment took her back to the Soviet Union, where she was the only foreign photographer who remained in Moscow when the first German bombs fell in 1941.
She went to the embassy and went up on the roof where she was in some very real danger and photographed night after night, and she got the trajectory of the bombs that were falling.
When the U.S. entered World War II, Margaret sought another overseas assignment. Her editors then arranged for her to be embedded with the U.S. Army Air Force.
Margaret was the first female correspondent in the war, and she was the only woman, I believe, during the entire war who went on a bombing mission.
At the end of the war, Margaret traveled through Germany with General Patton and was one of the first photojournalists to document the horrors of the concentration camps as they were liberated, producing some of her most iconic photographs.
She speaks in her autobiography quite openly about the camera kind of providing that protective layer so that she could continue with the work without being so distraught. It's an incredibly powerful series, and it was hugely influential on her life.
Throughout the rest of her career, Ms. Bourke-White continued to take overseas assignments, often related to human rights issues. She wrote about and photographed violence that erupted during the partition of India and Pakistan. She documented the mistreatment of blacks under apartheid in South Africa. In 1948, she interviewed and photographed Indian leader Mahatma Gandhi just a few hours before his assassination.
She took pictures other people did not take. What they say about photographers, you have to be at the right place at the right time. She arranged to be in the right place at the right time.
While covering the Korean War, Margaret noticed the first signs of Parkinson's disease. She retired from Life magazine in 1957 and lived permanently in Darien. Margaret Bourke-White authored or co-authored 19 books. Her autobiography, Portrait of Myself, published in 1963, became a bestseller. She also received numerous awards and honorary degrees. In 1971, Margaret Bourke-White died at the age of 67, but her photographic legacy lives on.
I think she really helps to kind of raise the consciousness of a generation of people to human rights. I think that the willingness to put herself at risk also served to kind of help construct this notion of Margaret as the new American woman who would defy gender conventions at times while also playing up to them in order to get the job done.
Margaret was driven. She was aggressive when she needed to be. She was like any good photographer. Whatever it took, she did and found a way to do it. And she was fearless.